we've now got this clear hash function right here that can be used to clear out some area of our Redis cache. Now, anytime someone makes a post request to our API/blogs route, we're going to make sure that we just dump all the information that is tied to them after the blog post is successfully created. However, there's just one thing I want to point out here. I don't know about you, but having to remember to write this line of code anytime that I want to expire some area of my cache is probably going to get a little bit tiresome pretty darn quickly. So in this video, we're going to do a little bit of refactor to make this process right here just slightly more automatic. So I'm going to delete this line of code because I don't want to have to write that out inside of every request handler that I put together. Instead, I'm going to go up to this route handler definition, and inside of here, you'll notice that the second argument to the route handler itself is a middleware. Remember, middlewares can be used to kind of automate certain effects as a request comes into our application. So I'm kind of thinking, every single time we create a blog post, we are always going to want to dump all the cache that is associated with that user. So maybe rather than putting some distinct line of code inside the request handler itself to clear our cache, maybe we should instead make a middleware that automatically deletes all of the cache associated with a given user. So then if we have any other request handlers like this blog post one right here, where we always want to dump the cache after the request is complete, we could use that middleware to do it for us, as opposed to having to actually write out that line of code in the request handler. So let's give that a shot. We're going to first set up the middleware inside of our middlewares directory. So here's the middlewares folder. I'm going to make a new file inside there called cleancache.js. Inside this file, we're going to require in that clear hash function we just put together. So clear hash is going to be required from services cache. And then we will create a new function and export it. So this function is going to be the middleware that's going to be ran automatically for us. Module.exports, rec, res, and next. And we'll put together the function body. Now there's just one thing here. Anytime we make use of middleware inside of an application, the assumption is always that the middleware is going to run before the request handler. However, when you start thinking about our blog post creation thing right here, we really don't want to dump our cache until after the blog post has been successfully created. So if the blog post is created successfully, great, dump the cache. But if it's not, well, maybe we want our cache to stick around. There's no reason to dump the cache if there's some error with the blog post, like maybe it's not formatted correctly or there's some validation error tied to it. So if there's some tiny error like that, we probably don't want to just automatically dump the cache every time. In other words, I think that we need to figure out some way to allow the request handler to run, and then after that, then run the middleware itself. Now there's just one little problem. The way that Express is wired up, it does not allow us to easily insert additional middleware after a request handler, like the one we have right here. If we added in a middleware to run after this request handler, the handler itself would have to accept the next function, which calls the next middleware in the chain, and then somewhere in the function body, or the route handler body, we would eventually have to call that next function. And this definitely does not solve any issues for us either, right? This is a pain in the rear as well. So instead, we're going to use a little trick. Back inside of my middleware file, I'm going to say await next, and I'm going to make sure that I mark this function as being async. So what this does is it makes sure that we call the next function, which is in this case the route handler, and we let the route handler do everything that it needs to do. And then after the route handler is complete, execution is going to come back over to this middleware right here. And at that point in time, then we will do our work, which is to call clear hash and pass in rec.user.id, like so. So this is going to allow the route handler to run first. We're going to wait for that to execute, and then after it's all done, we will then clear our cache. Okay, so let's give this a shot. We need to import this middleware back into our blog routes file. So back inside of blog routes, up at the top, I'm going to replace the clear hash import statement with a, let's see, what do we want here? We want clean cache from middlewares clear or clean cache. And then down inside of our route handler for creating a blog post, after checking to make sure that the user is logged in, we're going to wire up clean cache and then the request handler. Okay, so this is way more automatic than it was before. And we don't have to put in any like laborious thing in here like, oh yeah, make sure that you clean the cache. It's just going to happen automatically for us after the handler has been executed. Okay, so let's test this out inside the browser now. So I'm going to go back over. I'm going to refresh the page one time just to make sure everything still works. And then I'm going to create a new blog post. So I'm going to get my lorem ipsum text. I'm going to enter in my title. Next, save blog. And then if I scroll down to the bottom, I should automatically see my 5th blog post appear on the screen. And I definitely do. Great, so this is looking pretty good. Okay, so that's pretty much it for caching inside of our application. We definitely learned a lot along the way. The thing I want you to keep in mind with this entire caching setup is that caching really varies based on the project that you're putting together. So my hope here is not that you're just going to take our code that we put together and copy paste it directly over to your project. Instead, I would really prefer that you kind of think about the design of your cache ahead of time and decide whether or not some of the methodologies we used are applicable for your own personal project. We still have a lot to learn about a lot of advanced Node topics, so let's take a break right now and continue in the next video with our next topic.